Hurricane Idalia smashes into Florida with massive winds, and we have casualty reports already. We'll be talking about what's happening there, what the people are doing to cope, and where we go with that. In other news, X marks the spot, and that spot is censorship because the X safety team, formerly the Twitter safety team, has put out their new guidelines for political censorship going into an election year, just like we knew that they were going to do, but we'll talk about that, what that means, and where we go from there. The Associated Press puts out a large amount of fear porn to tell us that the conservative groups have a plan to dismantle the U.S. government, and somehow that's fascism. I don't know how he square that circle, but they don't have to square that circle apparently. And the Turtle Man, Mitch McConnell, appears to freeze up again while speaking to reporters in Kentucky. It is going to be all of this and more. So grab some friends, get some people in here, tell your family to come in and join us in the chat. And I can't make it on my own because my heart is in Ohio. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We've got a bunch of stuff to go over here tonight. It's actually a relatively slow night for news tonight, but that's fine because, a reminder, as we approach the end of this month, I am taking, unless there's a major news story coming out and we need to cover it right away, I will be taking the month of September off from Contemporary, with a most likely return to Contemporary coming on Tuesday nights weekly instead of daily. I'm going to look into this a little bit more just to see what's going to work best for everything, but it does seem like we've got the most crowd on Tuesday nights. We've got the most crowd engagement on Tuesday nights. Tuesday seems to be the night if we want to go back and have a news roundup of some sort. And I don't know if it's just because Tim doesn't go on Tuesdays or what the story is with that, but that does seem to be the night. So Tuesday is going to be our most likely comeback here when October comes around. So we'll be doing that. Plus, there's going to be, again, if there's a major news event, we will come out and do breaking news for the month of September. But we'll play some video games as well. We'll have some fun with that. I think that'll be a bit more of a fun time. I've still got Unfiltered Brew with Hello Brutiful that I'll be doing on Thursday nights, so that's still going to be going on. We still got some stuff going on here. It's not going to be, again, I'm not quitting the microphone, but it'll still give me some time. I can sit down. I've got a video written up, topics, because I'll probably just off the cuff it again, talking about wealth and what it means and why our friends on the left think that it means that the person is just going out to a great big money bin like Scrooge McDuck does. I want to do more on the political analysis of the candidates. I would love to do a lot more of that, but that'll be coming down the pipes in the near future. We got a lot of stuff here to do. It's just, and again, I do apologize for this, for you guys who like being here daily, but with my 60-hour a week schedule, I cannot do a daily show anymore. It is the sad reality of life. Something had to give, and unfortunately, they are paying me a lot of money for that not to be the one that gives. So we've got that coming up here, and again, we'll free up some projects. We'll do some other fun stuff here with that. But with this, let's get down into the news. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, Silent Caster, who raided us last night. I don't have the regular Twitch monitor up as we go, but we got a big raid from Silent Caster last night, so thank you for that. Cloud World Chronicles with Papa Palpatine, Overruled with KTZed, and the aforementioned Unfiltered Brew with Hello Beautiful. Go check out all that great programming as we aim to bring you a better news and culture experience. It's not just news, it's not just culture, it's a little bit of both. Given by some people who are very experienced, but also people who are just like you. That's right, stop getting your news and culture from people who hate you and wear suits that cost more than your house. Get your news and culture from people who are just like you. So go check out all of that great programming. I will personally advocate for everybody I just mentioned in the prior. And with that, we're going to get down into the news that we have for the night. And we are going to start, as we always do, with the finance report for the day. So let's get started. Let's get the live chat up. Do feel free to weigh in on what it is that you see, what it is you think about what's going on here. I check live chat on all the major platforms. So if you got something to say about something you see, or you just happen to see that I left my microphone off for an extended period of time, let me know in the live chat segment as we go, and let's get started on the Dow to start with for the day. The Dow is sitting up again today for a 4-day winning streak. It's not up as high as we've seen over the past week, only going up 37.57 points, or just a touch over 10% on the day. That is to 34,890.24 points. And it looks like it did take a spike at the beginning of trading and then settled off to play jump rope again with the previous close before ending up. It looked like it was starting to crash again at the end of trading, but as of right now, it looks like it is going to hold steady, and the futures are looking flat right now as well. On the Bitcoin, your Bitcoin tumbled throughout the day today, taking a big tumble at the beginning of trading, holding steady throughout a large swath of the day, taking another big tumble, and looked like it started to climb back a little bit before ending out to where we are at right now. So your Bitcoin ended the day at 27,252.80. That is down 464.3 US dollars, or 1.68% on the day. It's a bit of a scary little tumble that we see with the Bitcoin, but we will see if it gets down below the point where it's on sale again. Typically, I start to pick up Bitcoin if it gets below 20,000. Check with your local financial advisor to see what is best for you and your portfolio as far as the Bitcoin goes. And on our finance report for the day, because we don't do gas anymore because Google screwed that whole thing up, S&P 500 futures are flat after Wall Street notches 4-day winning streak from Sarah Min. Let's get the live chat up so I can see what you guys are doing here. Mogwai says, like most people in Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas right now, I want to know, have you ever seen the rain coming down on a sunny day? I have seen the rain coming down on a sunny day. Bitch was buffering. Grant is here Tuesday. Sugar, you know you'll miss me. God damn it, Graham. Grant says, the end of Richie Rich is hilarious. The villain breaks into their vault looking for money and just finds items of sentimental value. They explain that the money is investments in banks. Yeah, I do really want... I forgot about that. I'm going to use that, by the way, when I do my video analyzing wealth and what that means versus having cash on hand. Grant says, censorship was never off the menu. They just run specials for election season. Censorship is always on the menu, right above the borscht. Yeah, we'll be talking about the borscht, too, because that's one of the big panic points that they're going to put out for this. Let's read about your finance for the day. The U.S. S&P futures were flat on Wednesday after the S&P notched a 4th straight positive day. Traders also digested a Salesforce earnings beat after hours. Futures for the broader index and the NASDAQ 100 futures climbed 0.03 and 0.04 respectively. Dow Industrial Average futures rose by 62 points, or 0.18%. Salesforce advanced about 6% in extended trading after the software company announced fiscal second quarter results and third quarter guidance Wednesday that exceeded analyst expectations. Those gains helped buoy Dow futures. Investors are coming off a positive session for the major averages on Wednesday, with the S&P notching a 4-day win streak. The broader index closed the day 0.38% higher. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added 37.57 points, or 0.11%. Meanwhile, the tech-heavy Nasdaq gained 0.54%. It was also the fourth straight positive day for the 30-stock Dow and the Nasdaq. The gains helped the major averages trim their monthly losses. The Dow and the S&P are each lower by more than 1% in August, while the Nasdaq is off by over 2%. Investors digested weaker than expected payrolls data and annual gross domestic product growth forecasts that nevertheless suggested the Federal Reserve could soon be done hiking rates, boosting equities. They're not done hiking rates yet. They do this every couple months, and they say, oh, this time will be the last time, this time will be the last time, and it's never the last time. If we think about the Fed, they're looking at growth, they're looking at jobs and inflation, and if all three are going in their direction, meaning in their favor, then you can make a case that the Fed is probably done with tightening. Hightower's Stephanie Link said on CNBC's Closing Bell on Wednesday. Earnings season continues to wind down on Thursday. Dollar General is set to report before the open. Broadcom and Lululemon post results after the close. Traders are awaiting a July personal consumption expenditures data, an inflation gauge closely watched by the Fed. Economists polled by Dow Jones are expecting a year-over-year rise of 4.2% last month, up slightly from a 4.1% increase the previous month. Weekly jobless claims data will also be out on Thursday morning, so we'll be talking about that tomorrow in the afternoon. So we will see what happens. Your layoffs report for the day. A missing link media company with the big layoffs today from the New York Post. Barstool Sports to cut staff by nearly 25% as mass layoffs loom. From Andrew Marchand and Michael Rosenstein. Now, I didn't actually know until recently that this was like an actual major company that was out there. I remember back in the days when this was just kind of an independent thing. Like, I remember that Jenna Marbles was a part of it before she went off on her own and got super famous for doing pretty much nothing. Got super famous for moving to California and turning vegan. I know she was doing stuff with that. If I remember correctly, they started out in Boston probably right about the time I was living there. I think maybe just a little bit before, but they were just starting out with that. Barstool Sports will lay off nearly 25% of its employees, which will result in around 100 jobs lost on Thursday, the Post has learned. Dave Portnoy has publicly stated the cuts were coming after he regained control of the company following its breakup with Penn Entertainment. Barstool has around 430 employees. It added around 300 people in the 3.5 years it was with Penn. I've been very clear, anybody that's paid attention, we're going to have the layoffs and cuts, and they've started, and it sucks, Portnoy said earlier this week on Barstool Sports Radio. And people who know me from the beginning, I hate firing people. You can be incompetent, not work, and I generally don't fire because I hate it so much. It's the worst thing to fucking do. Having said that, we're in a position, it's a no-brainer. It's not like I have that moral. Well, you can't do it because nobody will have jobs. We'll all not have jobs, so we have to get back to a break-even thing. We're losing a lot, and it sucks. Portnoy founded I'm talking like Biden, man. Portnoy founded Barstool in 2003. He sold the majority of Barstool to the Chernin Group in 2016. In 2020, Penn Entertainment finalized its acquisition of Barstool for a total of $551 million. Penn lost somewhere in the neighborhood of $800 million on Barstool, which the company had originally hoped would boost its sports betting business by tying into one of the most recognizable brands in sports media. Following the sale back to Portnoy earlier this year, Penn Entertainment announced it was partnering with ESPN to rebrand its existing sports books. So it looks like they let that go basically because they were getting ready to go back and sell back out as well. But they're losing about 100 people. Another 3-digit cut. We see these every single day, and that's where we are at with that. I got one more finance one for here because, well, they're going to tell you that the price of tires and trucks and TVs and Keurigs and blenders and clothes and toys and even some consumer electronics are going to drop. And that's going to be the indication that inflation is going down. But the Daily Wire reporting, Food prices set to increase above historical average, according to government analysis from Leaf LeMahieu. Americans are expected to spend more on food throughout the rest of 2023 and into 2024 as prices continue to rise, even as Joe Biden touts record on inflation and Bidenomics. According to a recent analysis from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Economic Research Service, food prices will remain elevated for the remainder of this year and into 2024, with increases in 2023 projected to be higher than average. Food prices are expected to grow more slowly in 23 than in 22, but still at historical average rates in 23. All food prices are predicted to increase 5.9%, with a prediction interval of 5.3 to 6.5%, the USDA researchers said in a press release. Prices for food at home, which is food bought at the grocery store or supermarkets, are expected to increase by 5.2%. By the end of 23, food away from home purchases in restaurants is expected to jump 7.1% because they have to add extra labor to this, of course. Prices for key food staples are expected to increase, including beef and veal, 4.2%, and other meats, 4.8%, poultry, 3%, dairy products, 4.1%, fats and oils, 9.6%. Probably seed oils on top of that, processed fruits and vegetables, 9.2%, sugar and sweets, 9.3%, cereals and bakery products, 9%, non-alcoholic beverages, 7.6%, and other foods, 7.4%. Food inflation is expected to continue into 2024, but rise at a lower rate. In 24, all food prices are expected to increase 2.8%, with a prediction interval of negative 2%. Unless we have a major crash of the economy, we're not getting into the negative, by the way, just so you know. To 7.9%. That is a big window that they could come from. Food at home prices are predicted to increase 2.1%, with prediction interval of negative 5.1% to 9.9%. Again, we're not going negative unless there's a major crash and literally nobody can go and buy food anymore. And food away from home prices are expected to increase 5.1%, with a prediction interval of positive 2.7 to 7.5%, the USDA said, because I'm pretty sure, and they do a lot of this too when we're in recession periods, no matter what happens, no matter what goes on with the economy or anything else, we are going to see a push to get the minimum wage and increase, and it's probably going to happen. In fact, it's quite likely, to prevent the fact that anybody can undercut anybody else once we start losing and hemorrhaging jobs again. Just like we did in 08. The predictions were made by examining data from July 2023, Producer Price Index and Consumer Price Index. In July 23, food cost 4.9% more than in July of 2022. So just keep in mind when you go to the grocery store or you go to the restaurant, it's going to start getting a lot more expensive, but that's what we see coming from that. Let's talk about Idalia again. From the Associated Press, Hurricane Idalia hits Florida with 125-mile-an-hour winds, flooding streets, snapping trees, and cutting power. From Terry Spencer, Hurricane Idalia tore into Florida at the speed of a fast-moving train on Wednesday, splitting trees in half, ripping roofs off hotels, and turning small cars into boats before sweeping into Georgia as a still powerful storm that flooded roadways and sent residents running for higher ground. Let's actually get the map up and see how they're doing and where they're going. Oh, by the way, Boombox, I saw this and I wanted to get through finance before I mention it, but before I click off of this tab here, Boombox says, I saw Old Turtle Glitch Error 404 again. Sad to see, since his mini stroke, he's aged another 20 years. I'm going to tell you I've not aged another day. In fact, I am just as healthy as I was before I Mitch McConnell, everyone. Alright, let's look at the Hurricane Idalia path. Up we go. So now it looks like it is ripped through Florida. It's in Georgia currently, even just the other side of Savannah. Looks like there is a wide swath going there that's actually touching Savannah at this point. But it's probably going to get to, the eye is going to get to not quite to Myrtle Beach before swinging out and heading out to the ocean is what they have predicted right now. And then a quick turn north, somewhere out into the ocean. So don't go sailing there for the next couple days, apparently. Probably losing a little bit of steam as it comes up over Georgia too, I would have to guess, if my meteorology knowledge serves me correctly. Maybe I am going to start talking and losing my place like Mitch McConnell does. Let's keep reading here. All hell broke loose, said Billon Thomas of Perry, a mill town located just inland from the Big Bend region where Idalia came ashore. Thomas fled with his family and some friends to a motel, thinking it would be safer than riding out the storm at home. Well, I'm not messing around. Why do I know that song but can't think of who did it? It's going to drive me nuts too. But as Idalia's eye passed over about 8:30 a.m., a loud whistling noise pierced the air and the high winds ripped the building's roof off, sending debris down on her pregnant daughter, who was laying in bed. Fortunately, she was not injured. Thank God for that. Thank God for small miracles. Oh, REO Speedwagon. I don't know why I thought that was Van Halen, and I knew that wasn't right either. I didn't think Speedwagon, I guess, but I knew that Van Halen wasn't right. It was frightening, Thomas said. Things were just going so fast. Everything was spinning. After coming ashore, Idalia made landfall near Keaton Beach at 7:45 a.m. as a high-end Category 3 hurricane, with a maximum sustained winds of nearly 125 miles an hour. It had weakened to a tropical storm with winds of 70 miles an hour by late Wednesday afternoon. As the eye moved inland, high winds and shredded signs blew off roofs, sent sheet metal flying, and snapped tall trees. But as of midday Wednesday, there were no confirmed deaths in Florida. Although fatal traffic accidents in 2 counties may end up being storm-related, Florida man Ron DeSantis said. Unlike last year's Ian, which hit the heavily populated Fort Myers area, leaving 149 dead in the state, Idalia blew into a very lightly inhabited area known as Florida's Nature Coast, one of the state's most rural regions that lies far from crowded metropoli or busy tourist areas and features millions of acres of undeveloped land. Again, small miracles. That doesn't mean it didn't do major damage. Rushing water covered streets near the coast, unmoored small boats, and nearly 500,000 customers in Florida and Georgia lost power. In Perry, the wind blew out store windows, siding off buildings, and overturned a gas station canopy. Heavy rains partially flooded Interstate 275 in Tampa, and wind toppled power lines in the northbound side of I-75 just south of Valdosta, Georgia. Storm surge could rise as high as 16 feet in some places. Some counties implemented curfews to keep residents off the roads. Less than 20 miles south of where Idalia made landfall, businesses, boat docks, and homes in Steinhatchee, Florida, were swallowed up by water surging in from Dead Man's Bay. Officers blocked traffic into the coastal community of more than 500 residents known for fishing and foresting industries. Silentcaster is here. Silentcaster survived Idalia. Mogwai told me he's all in for ASA 2024. I'm sorry to hear that. Can somebody please get Mitch on an Xfinity 5G or 10G? Nothing happened where Silentcaster. I think, and I'm not going to say where I think you are, because I think you told me, but I think you're further south than where Idalia is, like considerably. Idalia was full of strong, damaging winds, and then she met Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was more than a match for her hot hair, or with her hot hair. Nice. See, nothing good ever comes out of Florida-Georgia line. Hey, baby, you're a song. You make me want to roll my windows down. Unpopular opinion. As much as I think that entire band is cringe, I did enjoy the little mashup that they did with Nelly. I think that actually turned out really well. The rest of the music sucks. Because of the remoteness of the Big Bend area, search teams may need more time to complete their work compared with past hurricanes in more urban areas, said Kevin Guthrie, director of the Florida Department of Emergency Management. You may have 2 houses and a 5-mile road, so it's going to take some time, Guthrie said. The National Weather Service in Tallahassee called Idalia an unprecedented event since no major hurricanes on record have ever passed through the bay, abutting the Big Bend. On the island of Cedar Key, downed trees and debris blocked roads and propane tanks exploded. R.J. Wright stayed behind so he could check on elderly neighbors. He hunkered down with friends at a motel when it was safe, walked outside into chest-high water. It could have been a lot worse for the island, which juts into the Gulf, since it didn't take a direct hit, he said. So it looks like Big Bend is going to be the point of reconstruction for quite a while at this point. The system remained a hurricane as it crossed into Georgia with top winds of 90 miles an hour. I'm sorry. No, that would be 90 miles an hour because it'd be 150 kilometers. They just typoed that. After drenching Florida, mostly to the east of Tallahassee, Florida's capital, forecasters said it would punish the Carolinas overnight as a tropical storm. In Tallahassee, the power went out well before the center of the storm arrived, but the city avoided a direct hit. A giant oak tree next to the governor's mansion split in half, covering the yard with debris. In Valdosta, Georgia, Idalia's fierce winds uprooted trees, sent rain flying sideways. John Wick said he didn't take the approaching hurricane seriously until Wednesday morning, when he woke up to howling winds outside his home after rescuing his young nephews from a trampoline in their backyard, where the water rose to his knees. He brought them to his car and was climbing into the driver's seat when a tree toppled right in front of the vehicle. If that tree would have fell on my car, I would be dead, said Wick, who ended up getting rescued by another family member. A lot of small miracles coming from this. I'm very, very happy to see. We see the people walking in chest-high water. I'm going to keep this muted here. But we've got security camera of the rain going sideways, the storm surge. Lots of flooding. I guess the question is was it actually a hurricane or was it sin? If you know, you know. As of 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Idalia was 40 miles west of Savannah and 115 miles west-southwest of Charleston, South Carolina. The National Hurricane Center said it was moving northeast at 21 miles an hour. So, Mogwa, you might want to hunker down for a little bit. I don't know where you're at in South Carolina. I know, with your interest in South Carolina, that you're somewhere over there. So hunker down and make sure you stay safe, please. The Daily Wire reporting, unprecedented event. Idalia smashes into Florida. We'll cover this one just briefly from Hank Berrien. Idalia made landfall at Category 3 strength in Florida's Big Bend at 7:45 a.m. Wednesday morning, smashing into the town of Keaton Beach just north of Steinhatchee with fierce 125 miles an hour winds. By 0900, the center of the storm was 20 miles south-southwest of Madison, not our Madison, of course, and 45 miles south-southwest of Valdosta, Georgia, with winds reduced to 110 miles an hour. DeSantis has suspended tolls in counties targeted by the storm so residents could evacuate more quickly, and he's declared a state of emergency for 49 Florida counties. Some 5,500 National Guard members have been assigned to aid evacuations and building defenses. Press conferences are scheduled throughout the day for updates from the governor that will be streamed on the floridachannel.org and his Facebook page. Speaking of the 30,000 to 40,000 linemen who are ready to go to work to address the inevitable outages, 25,000 are already in place. DeSantis stated, "They will immediately move to commence power restoration efforts. We've been working with counties to make sure that they know that we have resources ready to deploy, and we want to be helpful to support their efforts." I am a lineman for the county. Here's a full video of the destruction of the Horseshoe Beach, Florida, camera moments ago. The camera was at least 10 feet above the sea level. Waves were overtaking this camera during its final moments. Look at that. Think of the surfing. Mocha says God is shooting warning shots at Castor. Apparently, Mogwai is in Castor's basement with Lindsay. Lindsey Graham. Look at that. Still, I want to see a big pipeline pop up, especially with winds like that. Man, oh, look at that. Look at her get hit once and it discolored everything. And the water turned as blood. I hope that's discoloration of the camera, by the way. Otherwise, a lot of us are going to have to start saying some prayers. Which we should be doing anyway, but... Which bowl was it that turned the water to blood? And the second bowl is poured upon the sea, and the sea turns to blood, and every living creature in it dies. It was the second bowl. I thought it was the sixth for whatever reason. Some other videos of the power of the storm.
Tree debris flying all over the place! Big time tree debris! Wow! Wow! Big branch!
Big branch!
Big branch! Almost hit the car! Strong winds hammering the nature coast of Florida here. Major hurricane Idalia.
Some of the flooding, storm surge. But again, thankfully, I mean, it sucks for the people that do have to pass away at this point, but thankfully, this was a fairly sparse area, so people either got out or they weren't there to begin with, so we have that. I got one here from CNN inside a Hurricane Hunter flight as Idalia became a Category 4 storm. The warning came early. One pilot told me right at the beginning before we took off that it would be a really rough ride. He said the storm was intensifying so rapidly that would have a ton of spin-up tornadoes and rough turbulence. He warned me I flew Hurricane Dorian in 2019 with U.S. Air Force Reserve Hurricane Hunters when Dorian was Category 5 over the Bahamas, and that was a completely smooth ride, so the bigger the hurricane doesn't always necessarily mean the rougher ride. The WC-130J Hercules aircraft from the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron departed Kessler in Biloxi Tuesday at 11 p.m. Adelia would make landfall as Category 3 with sustained high winds of 125 miles an hour at 7:45 a.m. Wednesday, where the Panhandle meets the peninsula. The storm surge was record-breaking from Tampa to the Big Bend. It was a very short ride in the outer bands of the hurricane over the Gulf Coast. It took a little less than 30 minutes to actually reach the leading edge. At the last minute, the National Hurricane Center changed our flight plan and had us go in a different part of the storm instead of the original entry point. This was called the landfall flight. Technically the last flight before the storm made landfall. We were only supposed to be in the air about 8 hours. We ended up being in the air a little over 10. The Hurricane Center just decided where they were going to keep us in the eye as long as we could before landfall. And then they had us do what's called shore patrols, going up and down the shoreline at very low altitude, just getting readings of the wind shear and the temperatures. We made a dozen passes up and down the Florida shoreline. Dude, you think the fighter guys have balls of steel? Think about what it takes. And I understand that Hercules is a fairly stout aircraft. But think of what it takes to say, yes, I'm going to fly directly into the sheerest winds possible into a hurricane. To do low-level reconnaissance and measure shear. Before we took off, First Lieutenant Zach McDermott, a 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron pilot, told me to make sure I was in my jump seat as much as possible. I could tell he knew it was going to be a rough ride. The entire flight crew was so awesome. They gave me headsets so that I could listen in the conversations between the onboard meteorologist, the navigator, and the flight director, and the pilot the whole time. Everybody had such a specific job. The coolest one on the plane was the in-flight meteorologist because his job was just to scrub the radar. From the moment we penetrate the storm, he's focused on the radar, looking for those tornado signatures and rough turbulence. He relays the location to the navigator, who tells the pilot how to steer clear of it so that literally we don't run smack dab into a tornado inside the hurricane. And yet, accidents do happen. The one time my soul left my body, I was on the flight deck with the pilots. It was dark the majority of our flight. The lightning was so intense and the hail hitting the plane was so intense. We're about to go through the eye well, a crew member said. I'm sitting up there with the pilots. We're rocking and swaying. All of a sudden, the flight controls start screaming, check altitude, check altitude, check altitude. Throttle up, and I'm like, oh my god, this is what happens in the movies. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that at that point I would have been, and I do stay calm for the most part, as much as I can. But even if I didn't say anything other than looked up and said, well, it was nice knowing you guys. Inside my head it would have been, we're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. Like, literally, I had a major kitchen fire with a pillar of flame coming out of a cast iron pan that took out the hood in the last place that I lived. Didn't really hurt anything else. It marked up the wall a little bit, but that was just paint all that damaged. And took some of the paint out the side of the fridge, but for the most part, I mean, it looked scarier than it was. And yet I still looked up at it, and the first thing that came out of my head and came out of my mouth when I looked at it, I said, oh, that's lame. And I walked out and got the fire extinguisher. And that's probably about what I would be doing on that flight. Even if, again, on the inside, I'd be screaming, we're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. So that's your hurricane update for the day. We gotta talk about X. I know Caster's gonna be mad that we're talking about X. We gotta talk about X. Because regardless of one of my regular listeners' opinions on what it does to the regular discourse, it is going to be a major source of the political discourse for everybody but Caster coming up into the election. So we got to talk about it because it does seem like they are going to be going back down the same roads that they did before, starting with the X that announced it all. At Safety, which is Safety at X, says X has a responsibility to put the right systems in place to ensure our communities have access to open and accurate, safe political discourse. That's why we're hiring more people, updating our policies, and evolving our product. And they've got the Twitter blog here, so they can read what they intend to do, which I have not read yet, but that's right here. But just a couple things that were commented back on this. Open political discourse is sufficient, accurate, and safe. Smells like censorship. The Red-Headed Libertarian says, please don't use dystopian phrases like open, accurate, and safe political discourse. Friend of the show, Judy Among the Wildflowers, says, in other words, you're promoting censorship. Who can objectively determine what is accurate and safe information for others? And a number of other people reminding everybody that this is going to pretty much target one group of people in one direction and leave another group of people alone. And I've got some examples here in the stack too of things that are probably going to actually make it through, even though they're blatantly false. They're going to make it through the checkers and be seen as perfectly acceptable political discourse. But let's read the blog first. Let's get into that. From X Safety. Supporting people's right to accurate and safe political discourse on X. And again, who determines what's accurate and safe? You should be able to do that for yourself. More than 500 million people from around the world gather on X to talk about the interest in real time. And that includes elections. X enables people to directly engage on important topics with elected representatives, local or national leaders, and fellow citizens. During elections, X works to get in front of a range of tactics that people use to target the process. To do this, we hire the right people, update our policies, and evolve our product. I will almost guarantee putting an entire paycheck down as a bet. And I get paid bi-weekly, so that's a lot of money. To put a bet down to say the people who are being suggested or who are being hired are being suggested by the government, the DNC, or both. I would almost bet 2 weeks' pay of that. Mowa says, of all spots for the Book of Revelations to kick in, Florida was 2-1 odds. Nice. Love that. I just feel like this is that Back to the Future meme where Marty shouts, "Hey, I've seen this one! It's a rerun!" What's a rerun? What do you mean you've seen this one? It's brand new. Our people, we're currently expanding our safety and elections team to focus on combating manipulation, surfacing inauthentic accounts, and closely monitoring the platform for emerging threats. We have rules in place to protect the safety and authenticity of conversations on X. During elections, our civic integrity policy provides an extra layer of protection that's applied for a limited period of time before and during an election. We're updating this policy to make sure that we strike at the right balance between tackling the most harmful types of content, those that could intimidate or deceive people into surrendering their right to participate in a civic process, and not censoring a political debate. The policy will also be aligned with our updated enforcement philosophy, the freedom of speech, not reach. And that's where they're going to do it, right there. That's exactly where they're going to run out and do it. Freedom of speech, not reach. So you can say whatever it is you want. They're not going to ban you for saying whatever it is that you want about the election. Well, they probably will at some point come down to do that too. But if you don't align with the people that they're hiring, who again are probably suggested by the DNC or the government, and we just turn your reach down to like next to zero. I'm in that camp, by the way. We will add publicly visible labels to posts identified as potentially violating the civic integrity policy, letting people know when their reach has been restricted. You don't have to let us know, we know. Building on our commitment to free expression, we're also going to allow political advertising. Because of course they are. Starting in the US, we'll continue to apply specific policies for paid-for promoting political posts. This will include prohibiting the promotion of false or misleading content, including false or misleading information intended to undermine public confidence in an election. That I'm not going to see because I have an ad blocker on everything that I use on X. While seeking to preserve free and open political discourse, we'll also provide a global advertising transparency center so that everyone can review political posts being promoted on X, in addition to robust screening processes to ensure only eligible groups and campaigns are able to advertise. We continue to scale Community Notes, an innovative tool that empowers a vetted and growing group of people to add context to posts. When they see something that could be wrong, misleading, or requires another point of view, X shouldn't determine the truthfulness of disputed information. Rather, we should empower our users to express their opinions and openly debate during elections, in line with our commitment to protecting freedom of expression. Yeah, I have to pay the $8 to get on the Community Notes board, which I might do, especially if I'm going to free up some time not doing contemporary every day. That's actually something I'm interested in doing, is doing Community Notes. Because, I mean, I clearly have the knowledge to go and look into some of this and the ability to research and find what the actual truth is behind it. I've been doing it for you guys for 3 years, every day. I have a body of resume. Our work is ongoing. These increased investments in people, policy, and product will further ensure our communities have access to open, accurate, and safe political discourse on X. So censorship is back on the menu. And only the opinions that are acceptable will be part of the political discourse. Aren't you excited? And as bad as they're actually announcing that X is going to be, Facebook is worse. Here's an example of something that got through the censorship and put out as a completely accurate post. From the Associated Press, conservative groups draw upon plan to dismantle the US government and replace it with Trump's vision. Well, I mean, you could just stop at the dismantle the US government. That R word, that doesn't need to be there. And this guy here would be a pretty freaking happy guy if he did that. From Lisa Mascaro. With more than a year to go before the 2024 election, a constellation of conservative organizations is preparing for a possible second White House term for Trump, recruiting thousands of Americans to come to Washington on a mission to dismantle the federal government and replace it with a vision closer to his own. Oh my God, the propaganda. Oh, the propaganda of something like this. Led by the long-established Heritage Foundation. Ooh! Heritage Foundation! Think tank and fueled by former Trump admin officials, the far-reaching effort is essentially a government in waiting for the former president's run, or any candidate who aligns with their ideals and can defeat Dork Brandon in 2024. With nearly 1,000-page Project 2025 handbook and an army of Americans, the idea is to have the civic infrastructure in place on day one to commandeer, reshape, and do away with what Republicans stride as the deep state bureaucracy, in part by firing as many as 50,000 federal workers. Where the hell do I sign up? We need to flood the zone with conservatives, said Paul Dance, director of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project, and a former Trump admin official who speaks with historical flourish about the undertaking. Okay, see, we need to flood the zone with conservatives. That's a plan right there. Because if you were truly in concern of the deep state, you know what you would replace it with? Nothing! You'd get rid of the goddamn crap. This is a clarion call to come to Washington. He said people need to lay down their tools and step aside from their professional life and say, this is my lifetime moment to serve. No, you can fuck yourself. I have work to do. The unprecedented effort is being orchestrated with dozens of right-flank organizations. Many new to Washington represents a changed approach from conservatives who traditionally have sought to limit federal government by cutting federal taxes and slashing federal spending. Well, no, that's the vast majority of the conservatives who are along with this. That's still their goal. See, and again, I've talked about this when I talk about a contemporary all the time. And I've talked about it when I did my Ron DeSantis video. The core of MAGA, and that is, by the way, a part of the reason why there is that sentiment. I'm not denying that everybody who's into this is a plant from the government, but there is that sentiment of they want to replace it with people loyal to them because they are former Democrats. They don't know any different than worshiping the government and the executive branch because it's what they did all their life as a union worker, as a working class American, typically between the ages of, let's say, 30 and 60 right now. That's all they've ever done, is worship the federal government. So they don't know any different, and they think everything will be solved by putting their own people in power. I have bad news for you. It won't be. It's just going to make it very, very bad in a completely different way. As more people look up and less than genuine people slip through the cracks and get into power and realize that they like having power over other people and do stupid shit to keep it. Mogwai says, I put down my tools and looked to serve, but then I remembered my paycheck and got my ass back to work. The unprecedented effort is being orchestrated with dozens of right-flank organizations, many new to Washington, and represents a changed approach. Oh, I read that one already. Instead, Trump-era conservatives want to gut the admin state from within by ousting federal employees they believe are standing in the way of the president's agenda and replacing them with like-minded officials more eager to fulfill a new executive approach to governing. And you can tell these people, by the way, until you're blue in the face, that this is a bad idea and this is not going to go well for you. While the leftoids' view of having the deep state and having the government have control over every aspect of your lives is something I disagree with entirely, I will stand proudly with these people and say, no, you don't want to put those people in there either. Now, of course, the leftoids will drag me out and tar and feather me when they find out that I don't want their people in either. Because I don't want anybody in these positions. The goal is to avoid the pitfalls of Trump's first years in office when the Republican president's team was ill-prepared. His cabinet nominees had trouble winning Senate confirmation, and policies were met with resistance by lawmakers, government workers, and even Trump's own appointees who refused to bend or break protocol, or in some cases violate laws to achieve his goals. While many of the Project 2025 proposals are inspired by Trump, they're being echoed by rivals Florida man Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy Ding Dong, and are gaining prominence among other Republicans. And if Trump wins a second term, the work from the Heritage Coalition ensures the president will have the personnel to carry forward his unfinished White House business. The president day one will be a wrecking ball for the admin state, said Russ Vought, a former Trump administration official involved in the effort, who is now president of the Conservative Center for Renewing America. Much of the president's agenda will be accomplished by reinstated what's called Schedule F. Execute Schedule F, a Trump-era executive order that would reclassify tens of thousands of the 2 million federal employees as essentially at-will workers who could be more easily fired. Biden had rescinded the executive order upon taking office in 2021, but Trump and other presidential hopefuls now vow to reinstate it. "It frightens me," said Mary Guy, a professor of public administration at the University of Colorado, Denver, who warns the idea would bring a return to political spoils system. Experts argue that Schedule F would create chaos in civil service, which was overhauled during President Carter's administration in an attempt to ensure a professional workforce, and then political bias dating from the 19th century patronage. As it now stands, just 4,000 members of the workforce are considered political appointees who typically change with each administration. But Schedule F could put tens of thousands of career professional jobs at risk. But again, I mean, realistically, why should a new administration be forced to work, especially in executive branch positions? Now, as far as legislative positions, congressional appointees, and interns, people like that, or people whose jobs depend on the legislative branch, or clerks of court or anything like that on the judicial branch, that's a completely different story. But why should a new administration be forced to take over a bunch of people who hate the president because they were hired in mass and in bulk by the previous administration? We have a democracy that is at risk, Guy said. No, we have... what Mary Guy really meant is we have a hegemony that's at risk of suicide. Schedule F is just one more bullet in the gun. So, and again, I will remind you, going in and putting these people who are eager and desperate to be in the government in place of people who were eager and desperate to stay in the government is a bad idea. You know how I know that? Look at the Donald's cabinet picks, for God's sakes. Look at how much of a dumbass fiasco that was. And you want to spread that among tens of thousands of people who are supposed to be carrying out your orders? Are you stupid? The ideas contained in Heritage's coffee table-ready book are both ambitious and parochial, a mix of long-standing conservative policies and stark head-turning proposals that gained prominence in the Trump era. There's a top-to-bottom overhaul of the Department of Justice, particularly curbing its independence and ending FBI efforts to combat the spread of misinformation. Good. See, this is a good thing. It calls for stepped-up prosecution of anybody providing or distributing abortion pills by mail. And then you go around and do something like that. There are proposals to have the Pentagon abolish its recent diversity, equity, and inclusive initiatives, which is good because the people who are supposed to be defending this country should be the best hire for defending the country, not we've got to make sure that we've got X amount of people with X color of skin and Y amount of people of Y color of skin, etc., etc. What the project calls the woke agenda and reinstate service members discharged for refusing the pinko pox jabby jab. That's a good thing. So this is going to backfire tremendously. And by the way, it's going to be cannon fodder for the left-wingers out there. What's hilarious about this, by the way, is the Heritage Foundation is supposed to be talking particularly about getting government out of your life individually. And I don't believe for a second that that's what's going to happen if this gets put into place the way the Heritage Foundation wants it. But how it's presented on paper is to shrink the size and the scope of the federal government in everybody's lives. And yet our friends on the left continue to call it fascism. I made a joke earlier about the fact that it's the fascism of forcing people to live without the government that they depend on for every aspect of their lives. So this is from the Associated Press, a lot more fear porn than reality, of course. And yes, I do know that the Donald administration is going to put loyalists in these positions, not just eliminate them. but it's, especially with constitutionality involved, it's not going to go the way that the Associated Press wants you to believe it's going to go either. More things, by the way, that got through that are blatantly false, that still got through the misinformation censors on Twitter, or X, whatever you call it, from Yahoo Finance. Why Putin may help Trump again. Yes, this is a real article from Yahoo Finance, by the way. This is not parody. Rick Newman, senior columnist. Russia's war in Ukraine has entered a standoff phase, with neither side being able to make a decisive military move, and neither willing to start negotiating a settlement either. So what might change the outlook? One thing is the 2024 US presidential election. Analysts think that Vladimir Putin is biding for time, hoping former President Trump, the leading Republican contender, gets another term in the White House. Trump has suggested he would reduce or end U.S. military aid to Ukraine, whereas President Biden said his administration will stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Until the last Ukrainian is dead, I will stand here and give them weapons to stand up against every Russian out there, says President Biden. Obviously, Putin is waiting for the outcome of the U.S. 2024 election, said Michael McFaul, who served as ambassador to Russia under President Obama, on Substack. If Mr. Trump is reelected, Putin has reason to believe he could strike a much better deal on Ukraine, so why would he enter negotiations now? Well, and again, this goes back to the town hall where I already asked the question, why the hell would he enter it with why would he enter into negotiations with somebody who's called him a war criminal and made it his point blank goal to make sure that he gets nothing out of the deal? Why the hell would you ever go into negotiations for that? I wouldn't. That would be a stupid thing to do. Putin, in fact, has much more reason to pull for a Trump victory now than in 2016, when he directed Russian agents to use fake social media. Oh, Jesus Christ. And this is not marked as an op-ed either, by the way, just so you know. You use fake social media accounts and other tools to damage Hillary Clinton's campaign and aid Trump's. Back then, Putin favored Trump over Clinton because he thought Trump's threatened trade wars and other unorthodox policies might rupture Americans' relations with some of its allies, boosting Russia's interests. Putin got what he was after. As president, Trump slapped new tariffs on Canadian and European imports and became a loud in-house critic of the NATO military alliance, blasting many European nations for underspending on defense. At a summit meeting in Finland, Trump was practically subservient to... Oh, Jesus Christ. And again, this is not marked as an op-ed. But then came Trump's effort to overturn his 2020 election loss to Biden, followed by the Trump-inspired riots at the U.S. Selfie Fest on January 6th. In some ways, Russia's superpower foe never looked weaker. Jeez. Anyway, here's how he's going to do it, because I can't read the propaganda anymore. Well, this is still propaganda, but... Since Putin tried to influence the U.S. election outcome in 2016, what might he do in 2024 to help Trump and other Republicans win the White House? The answer may involve one of Biden's biggest political vulnerabilities, gas prices. Biden's approval rating tumbled as gas prices approached a new peak of $5 a gallon in June 2022. Gas prices have since fallen back to around $3.80, which is still outrageous, but Biden's approval rating has been stuck now in the low 40% range nonetheless to have comfortable odds of re-election. An incumbent should have minimum approval rating of 45 or so, preferably 50%. Biden appears to be in the danger zone. Putin has tried to weaponize Russia's oil and natural gas exports throughout the war, and it could do so to influence the 2024 election. Russia is still the world's second largest oil exporter after Saudi Arabia because of sanctions. Russia now sells less oil to Europe and more to China and India, but oil is a global commodity, and changes in supply or demand anywhere affect prices everywhere, so the question is whether Russia could pull enough oil from the market to push the U.S. gasoline prices in a way that would harm Biden's re-election odds. Dude, number one, we do not get enough oil from Russia to affect our gas prices here. That has been a lie since day one of the Ukrainian invasion, And again, a reminder of the fact that gas prices were even higher before the Ukrainian invasion. Number 2, Biden could solve this in a day because gas prices are speculative. And instead of trying to gut the American energy industry, go tell everybody, every one of his business buddies, which he has many of them are still in the oil industry, and even the people that hate him, hey, I'm gonna approve any lease that you want, anywhere, any drilling, anything. If you want to drill a hole in the middle of a street in New York, I'm gonna approve it here. Let's get that oil up out of the ground, man. Come on. Ironically enough, there's probably a nice big oil reserve under New York. Not crude oil or anything that came from fossils or dinosaurs, if you actually believe that. And I'm starting to question that itself, but just the runoff from the cars that's fallen through the ground and filtered and has probably formed a brand new oil reserve over the Industrial Revolution. I bet you could drill under any major city and find at least a small pocket of oil at this point. But flood the market with U.S. drilled oil and make a treaty with Mexico and go after their oil field too. Remember, Mexico is sitting on one of the biggest oil fields in the world. But pump that sweet, sweet black crude into the world, and you can completely undermine whatever it is that you think Putin's going to do. And probably win election or re-election walking away or hobbling away, whichever it is. This article is nothing but fear porn. Plain and simple, full out. And it goes along with the fear porn that we've been seeing pretty much since day one of the Biden candidacy. Hey man, hey, you gotta vote for me. I'm the only person that can protect you from them evil MAGA people. We'll put them in camps, I promise, man. Come on. Speaking of people who shouldn't be in charge of anybody here, the Turtle Man. From Disclose.tv with the video now. U.S. Senator Turtleman McConnell appears to freeze again.
What are my thoughts about what?
Running for re-election in 2026.
That's
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026? All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator. Benny.
okay.
Somebody else have a question? Please speak up.
What are my thoughts about what?
Okay, hold on. We got to do this again.
What are my thoughts about what?
Running for re-election in 2026.
That's
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026? All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator. Benny.
okay.
Somebody else have a question? Please speak up.
What are my thoughts about what?
And these are the people that believe that they should be in control of every aspect of your life. That terrifies the crap out of me. I hope that terrifies the crap out of the rest of you, too. Honestly, at this point. Let's read from CNN on this one. McConnell appears to freeze while speaking with reporters in Kentucky. From Morgan Rimmer and Manu Raju. The Senate Minority Turtle Mitch McConnell appeared to freeze for about 30 seconds on Wednesday while speaking with reporters after a speech in Covington, Kentucky. The incident is similar to an episode McConnell experienced at the U.S. Capitol late last month, and is likely to raise additional questions about the fitness of the 81-year-old to lead the Senate Republican caucus. Yeah, he has no fitness to do that. Get rid of him. Well, I mean, it's time to get rid of the old warmonger to begin with, but... Wednesday's episode occurred when a reporter asked the Republican leader if he was planning to run for re-election in the most ironic timing of a freeze-up on top of it. That is like the worst time to freeze up. I can't think of a worse time to freeze up. McConnell had to ask him to repeat the question several times, chuckled for a moment, then paused, closing his mouth and staring straight ahead. Someone at his side asked him, "Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 26, McConnell did not respond. "I'm sorry, we're going to need a minute," the aide told reporters, a member of the senator's detail. Spoke quietly to him for a moment, and McConnell was able to whisper an answer to him. McConnell turned back to reporters and said, "Okay." And his aide asked if anyone had another question and if reporters could speak up. A spokesman for the McConnell told CNN that the Kentucky Republican felt momentarily lightheaded and paused during his press conference today. A McConnell aide added, "While he feels fine, and as prudential measure, the leader will be consulting a physician prior to his next event." Oh, the helicopters are coming. By the way, if you see people black-clad popping through the window in just a moment, do not panic. But there probably won't be a contemporary tomorrow. McConnell, the leader of the Senate Republican caucus since 2007, has faced questions about his health throughout the year. He was treated for a concussion and fractured rib after falling in a hotel in Washington in March, returning to the Senate several weeks later. In late July, McConnell froze up for 30 seconds during a news conference on Capitol Hill. At the time, his office said the Kentucky Republican was lightheaded, and Republicans later said he was dehydrated. Speaking to reporters after the incident, McConnell insisted he was fine. Well, he's a turtle and he spends a lot of time out of water, so that's actually a possibility. McConnell and his top deputy, Republican Whip John Thune, spoke this afternoon after Wednesday's incident. The leader sounded like his usual self and was in good spirits, Thune spokesperson Ryan Rass said. President Biden told reporters on Wednesday, "Hey, look at that guy, man. I'm going to get in touch with him before that starts happening to me, man. Come on." Mitch McConnell, everyone. I threw this one in here because I thought that our friend the Mogwai would enjoy this because he's brought up Mr. Thurmond numerous times in chat. Fox News reporting Houston Keene. Biden claims to have literally convinced Strom Thurmond to vote for the Civil Rights Act at 21 years old. Let's read. President Biden on Monday claimed to have literally convinced South Carolina Democrat-turned-Republican Senator Strom Thurmond to vote for the Civil Rights Act when he was just 21 years old. Biden made the claim while speaking on the 60th anniversary of the founding of the Civil Rights Legal Group, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Pause for a moment, man. I thought that things had changed. I was able to, literally, man, not figuratively, talk Strom Thurmond into voting for the Civil Rights Act before he died, man. And I thought, well, just maybe there's real progress. But hate never dies, man. It just hides. And hides under the rocks, man. Just like that corn pop. He was a real bad dude. Biden was born on November 20th, 1942. The Civil Rights Act passed the Senate on June 19th, 1964. Which means, by the way, that he would have convinced Thurmond to pass the Civil Rights Act eight and a half years before he joined the Senate. 7.5 years, before he joined the Senate. Because remember, he couldn't be seated in the Senate when he was first elected in. They had to wait like a month, I think it was. It was something like that. I just know that he got into the Senate. He got voted into the Senate right before he turned 30, which is the age requirement to be in the Senate. Yep, there. While Thurmond and Biden were contemporaries in the Senate, the president would have been 21 at the time of the landmark legislation's passing, and nowhere near the Senate seat he won at 29. Additionally, Thurmond died on June of 2003, nearly 4 decades after the passage of the Civil Rights Act. A White House spokesperson told Fox News Digital that Biden was instrumental in getting Thurmond's vote for the Voting Rights Act in 1980. The president's comments came after a 21-year-old white gunman shot and killed 3 black people at a Dollar General in Jacksonville with a gun that he couldn't afford. And then conveniently killed himself so he'd never have to testify about it. The AP with a rare criticism of Biden, setting the record straight, of course. No, Biden didn't get segregationist Thurmond to vote for the Civil Rights Act. White House says he misspoke. Yeah, he does a lot of that, apparently. From Philip Marcello. Claim President Biden literally convinced segregationist U.S. Senator Strom Thurmond to vote in favor of the Civil Rights Act. The Associated Press's assessment, false. Biden had not yet been elected to the U.S. Senate when the landmark law was passed in '64, and Thurmond was among the prominent Southern Democrats to vote against the bill. A White House spokesperson confirmed the president misspoke in his remarks. He said Biden intended to refer to his efforts in the 80s to get Thurmond and other Senate Republicans to vote for the legislation renewing his Voting Rights Act of 1965. Yeah, he does that a lot, though. Again, the dude is not with us. And it was hilarious for a while, but it's starting to get sad. It really is. Alright, we've got, I think, some quick ones that we'll probably be able to fly through here before we talk about something I'm thankful for and head out of here for the day. Politico moderators for the second GOP debate unveiled. The affair will take place on September 22nd at the Reagan Presidential Library. Alex Isendat reporting. Fox News Media's Stuart Varney and Dana Perino, alongside with Univision's Ilya Calderon, will be the co-moderators of the second Republican debate the networks announced on Wednesday. The debate, which will be broadcast on Fox Business Network and Univision, will take place on September 27th at the Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley. Which, yes, even though we'll be on break from Contemporary still at that time, we will be watching that. I just want to double check to make sure that that does not interfere with my responsibilities that I made to brew. Yes, that's on a Wednesday. So, yes, break or not, we will be sitting up on Wednesday and doing the Republican debate and live commenting as it goes. So mark your calendars. That'll be at 8 p.m. that day. As I said, major news events will still get streamed. Seven candidates in the field have so far qualified for the debate. That includes Trump, who is unlikely to attend, as he said he's not doing the first two debates. He's probably not doing the third one either, just so you know. The selection of moderators provides some clues to the direction the debate is likely to head. Varney is a host on Fox Business, where he focuses largely on economic policy and private industry. Perino, a former press secretary for W, co-anchors America's Newsroom and is a co-host of The Five, one of Fox News' primetime shows that focuses largely on cultural issues and politics. Calderon, a history-making Afro-Latina anchor, currently co-anchors Univision's flagship evening newscast, Noticiero Univision. The debate is set to air from 9 p.m. through 11 p.m. on Fox Business News and Fox News Channel. Alongside live stream simulcast on Fox Nation, it will air in Spanish exclusively on Univision. And by the way, it will probably be on Rumble, but no matter where it is from any of those, it will be on this Rumble channel, and Twitch and DLive, no YouTube of course. As we sit and live react to what's going on there, and most likely the Donald will have an event of his own, live streamed and counter programming against it. An interesting one from Michigan. I did not pre-read this, but it seems to be in the same vein as the pseudonyms for Biden. From the Blaze, Governor Whitmer's consultants used Greek alphabet in calculated effort to conceal email, according to a lawsuit from Candace Hathaway. A consultant for Gretchen Whitmer used the Greek alphabet to conceal a message in calculated effort to hide the sensitive information from the public. A lawsuit obtained by the Washington Free Beacon revealed. The lawsuit claimed that Andy Levitt, a state energy department consultant, sent a coded email to one of Whitmer's advisors in September 2021. Levitt's message reportedly addressed concerns about Michigan's water crisis. The complaint alleged the consultant's email was typed in the Greek alphabet in a purported effort to hide the sensitive information. The top of Levitt's email contains 3 sentences rendered in Greek alphabet font, i.e. each English letter replaced with its Greek alphabet counterpart, which appears to be calculated to conceal the statements, the lawsuit stated. Decoding the text by changing the font to a standard English font reveals that the consultant prefaced his grave concerns about the water crises with a reference back to his prior warnings and the state and city defendants' failure to learn from the Flint tragedy. The coded message appeared to say, "Hot off the presses, as I warned, there are some major red flags. It seems like we're back at square one, having not learned from Flint," the lawsuit said. Levitt's correspondence with Whitmer's advisor, Kara Cook, concerned lead contamination in Benton Harbor. The small town's residents sued Whitmer's admin in 2021. They claimed the state showed deliberate indifference to solving their water crisis, because it did. Benton Harbor is a, from what I understand, a fairly conservative stronghold, and they don't care about the people there. To solving their water crisis, ultimately the lawsuit resulted in the discovery of the coded email from Levitt, which provided his initial thoughts on the town's lead contamination. Because Levitt used the Greek alphabet to type his message, the email correspondence would likely be excluded from public records requests because Michigan's Public Records Department cannot electronically search for records with Greek letters. The Washington Free Beacon reported, for instance, public records seeking correspondence with the keyword Flint would not have pulled Levitt's communication. Additionally, a search requesting keywords with Greek letters would have to be conducted manually, which would be very expensive and time-consuming. My question here, of course, is why are they so good at hiding things? And why are there so many things that need to be hidden, especially when it comes to public health policy? Like the lead contamination in Benton Harbor. Some news out of Tennessee from Mail Online. Tennessee House descends into chaos after Republicans end sessions on gun reform without any changes in the wake of the Nashville shooting. from Alex Hammer for DailyMail.com. Tennessee lawmakers abruptly ended a special session initially touted to improve safety following a deadly elementary school shooting after it descended into chaos when the GOP-dominant House refused to take up gun control measures. In a particularly heated moment, Republican House Speaker Cameron Sexton and Democrat Rep. Justin Pearson appeared to have a physical interaction as they exited, where both accused each other of shoving while being adjourned. The altercation was caught on camera by reporters and shows Sexton departing, as Pearson, who was expelled by the supermajority earlier this year, but has since been reappointed, approaches the speaker's stage with a sign calling for gun control. The two made contact as Sexton stepped to avoid a photographer, sparking a brief scuffle and a chorus of yelling from both lawmakers on the floor and protesters in the gallery, as House Republicans quickly filed out of the chamber. The spectacle followed a press conference during which lawmakers rejected a series of measures meant to quell gun violence authored in the wake of March's Covenant School shooting, which left 3 students and 3 staff dead. The measures were being argued following the deadly attack on March 27th by trans shooter Audrey Hale, who opened fire at the Covenant School in Nashville, killing 6 people before being shot and killed by 2 cops. I don't know, it sounds an awful lot like an insurrection. Maybe we should investigate into that. But they never will. And I was joking with Wiz Political over on Twitter earlier today, pointing out the fact, because he's trying to make the argument, of course, in the wake of something like this, that it seemed almost insurrection-y during the Act 10 protests when Democrat protesters literally moved into the Capitol while all of the Democrat lawmakers denied a quorum by going and hiding in Illinois. But remember, those protesters weren't insurrectionists, those were freedom fighters for our democracy, which of course is our hegemony. Let's grab one from the USA Today talking about student loan forgiveness, because he's going to go back and do it again. Biden plan for mass student loan forgiveness will get input from experts and borrowers, from Nirvi Shah. Borrowers eager to see President Brandon's new plans for widespread student loan forgiveness will have to wait a bit longer. After the Supreme Court knocked down Biden's earlier proposal for wiping out student loan debt, the admin turned to a different process for mass forgiveness allowed under the Federal Higher Education Act. Spoiler alert, this one's going to fail too. The so-called negotiated rulemaking process, or NEG-REG. Boy, that's almost a suggestive title. However, it can be lengthy, involving a committee of stakeholders who must unanimously agree on a policy proposal. If they don't find that consensus, the DOE can create its own proposal. But all that could take months or years for the policy, in this case student debt forgiveness, to take effect. On Tuesday, the Federal Education Department said it's opening the call for people who want to serve on that committee, which will meet starting in October. Specifically, the agency wants a 14-member committee to include 4 people who are current students and student loan borrowers who have distinct levels of education and experiences at different types of colleges or universities. The DOE said it's particularly interested in a variety of experiences with student loans and post-secondary education, including attending different types of institutions, receiving Pell Grant, and borrowing a Parent Plus loan. Nobody who's paid their loans off, I guarantee. 4 people from institutions of higher education, including HBCUs and minority-serving institutions. 2 members representing state officials and attorneys general from California and New York, by the way. 2 people from civil rights organizations and legal assistance organizations. 1 member who's a U.S. military service member or a veteran, and 1 member rep from a federal family education loan program. So again, nobody who was responsible, who went off and paid off all their student loans, and is now going to be on the hook for everybody else's. In fact, a full committee of people who can be bought off by student loans. Isn't it exciting how that works, by the way? Constantly. The Education Department will select committee members who are nominated for the post. The nominations can be sent to negregnominations@ed.gov, and the department said it must include clear information about the nominee, their constituency group, resume and experience, and contact information. Those nominations have to be received by September 14th. Dude, somebody should nominate me, seriously. I'll go in there and set the record straight. And by the way, I have student loans out, so I would qualify. Once members are selected, the committee is scheduled to meet virtually October 10th, 11th, November 6th and 7th, December 11th and 12th to discuss the ideas for regulatory reform. The Education Department said the meetings will be open to the public and include opportunities for public comment. Now, will this go anywhere? Probably not. One of the hard parts of this, of course, is that this has to be able to come in and be rammed through before elections so they can get the vote buy off of it. Or, again, they can go back and hang it over the heads of everybody saying we have to re-elect, otherwise the evil Donald Trump will go and stop this. Again, using the same byline that they've used before, and the Trump byline on top of it of, I'm the only person who could protect you from the evil other person. But he threw another $72 million out there. Biden cancels $72 million in student loan debt for borrowers who went to for-profit Ashford University. From Katie Labasco. Even though Biden's student loan forgiveness program was blocked by the Supreme Court earlier this year, his admin is moving forward with more targeted student debt cancellations allowing under existing programs. The Department of Education said Wednesday it's canceling $72 million in federal student loan debt for more than 2,300 borrowers who attended the for-profit Ashford University in California. Altogether, the Biden admin has approved the cancellation of more than $116 billion of student loan debt over 3.4 million people, about 1.1 million of whom are borrowers who were misled by for-profit college and granted relief under a program known as Borrower Defense to Repayment. There is a better than zero chance that I actually get into this program at some point, by the way. Not by my choice. But there is a better than zero chance because, and I know the school that I went to, there's a better than zero chance that this hits my school before election time. The Student Debt Forgiveness Program has been in place for decades and allows people to apply for debt relief if they believe their college misled or defrauded them. And my administration won't stand for colleges taking advantage of hardworking students, man, and borrowers as long as I'm president. And we'll never stop fighting to remember relief for who need it. Like those who attended Ashford, Biden said in a statement. The Department of Education found that Ashford made numerous substantial misrepresentations to borrowers between March 1st, 2009 and April 30th, 2020. The school is now known as the University of Arizona Global Campus. The DOE's review was based on evidence presented in a court by the California Department of Justice during its successful lawsuit against the school and its parent company at the time, Zovio. As the California Department of Justice proved in court, Ashford relied extensively on high-pressure and deceptive recruiting tactics to lure students. James Quall, the U.S. Undersecretary of Education, said in a press release, borrowers whose debt relief applications have been approved due to this action can expect to receive an email in September. They will not have to make any payments on the loans being discharged when the monthly payments resume in October, after the expiration of the pandemic-related pause. So, more taxpayer dollars coming out. And again, honestly, I will say the fact that Ashford in Arizona, because of what was founded there, and I don't know if that's true or not. I know that it's actually true in the school that I went to. I didn't read the lawsuit for Ashford, obviously. But if it's found to be true, then yes, they legitimately came out and said, oh, you'll make so much money if you come in and sign up right away. Don't even think about it. Just sign up right away. And then people came out and weren't able to go get any sort of jobs. So got another one from the USA Today, from Giuliani News today. Federal judge rules Giuliani defamed Georgia election workers. Trial awaits on damages. From Bart Jansen. Because if you have political enemies and you have control of the Department of Justice or the civil court system, then you use it. From Bart Jansen at USA Today. Rudolph Giuliani, Donald Trump's campaign lawyer for the 2020 election, is liable for defaming 2 Georgia election workers by repeatedly accusing them of mishandling ballots, a federal judge ruled on Wednesday. District Judge Beryl Howell's ruling means the case can go to trial and determine damages. The decision came a month after Giuliani conceded that he didn't want to dispute that he made false statements about the election workers, Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss. Giuliani has said he made the concessions to get past the sharing of evidence in the case and to aid his argument that the case should be dismissed. But Howell ruled that Giuliani's stipulations hold more holes than Swiss cheese. In order to preserve options for appeal, Howell found him liable for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, civil conspiracy, and punitive damage claims. Howell ordered Giuliani to reimburse Freeman nearly $89,172 for legal fees for his business, to reimburse her nearly $43,684 for legal fees as sanctions. Freeman and Moss issued a statement saying their fight to rebuild their reputation continues. That is such a load of shit, by the way. Rebuild their reputation. They are heroes among the leftoids right now because they're taking down Rudy Giuliani. That in and of itself should be enough to get this case dismissed as damages. Because they can go out and make a GoFundMe right now and raise probably $500,000 tomorrow and probably $500 million within the next month in small dollar donations. Nothing can restore all that we lost, but today's ruling is another neutral finding that has confirmed what we have known all along. That there was never any truth to any of the accusations about us, and that we did nothing wrong, the statement said. We were smeared for purely political reasons, and the people responsible can and should be held accountable. Would I say that this is probably politically motivated? Most likely. Do I think there's a lot of merit to it? Probably not. Do I think that there are going to be people that come out of the woodwork to continue to sue Giuliani into the ground? Probably. From the Blaze. And a win and an update from a yesterday story. Middle school student earns major win after school demanded that he remove the Gadsden flag from his backpack. From Chris Enlow. The Colorado school that admonished a middle school student for displaying the Gadsden flag in his backpack will now allow the student to display the flag. The story of 12-year-old Jaden, a 7th grade student at the Vanguard School in Colorado Springs, went viral on Tuesday after a video showed school admins reprimanding him over a "Don't Tread on Me" flag patch on his backpack. School officials claimed the flag was associated with slavery and racism, assertions to which the boy's mother objected. Connor Boyack, with a video, says meet 12-year-old Jaden, who was kicked out of class yesterday in Colorado Springs for having a Gadsden flag patch, which the school claims has origins with slavery. Let's watch.
Thank you. Do they know what the Gadsden flag is? That it's a historical flag?
So the reason that they do not want the flag, the reason we do not want the flag displayed is due to its origins with slavery and slave trade. That is what was, that is the reasoning behind why we do not want it displayed.
The Gadsden flag.
the Don't Tread on Me.
Okay. Which is the Gadsden flag. Okay. So he's what's going to happen if he doesn't take it off?
He is able to go. I was actually just telling him, like, I was upset that he was missing so much school. I'm like, so I asked if can he just take his stuff out of his bag and go back to class. Like, I just want him to go back to class. The bag can't go back if it's got the patch on it, because we can't have that in and around other kids. So that's what I was trying to, and then he said you were close. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with slavery. That's like the Revolutionary War patch that was displayed when they were fighting the British. Like, that's the revolution. Maybe you're thinking of like the Confederate Confederate flag.
Okay, I am
Is there a
just
history
here
that you
to
should
enforce.
tell them?
No, I am here to enforce the policy that was provided by the district, and definitely you have every right to not agree with it. I mean,
Yeah, because the
absolutely.
ACLU says that he's allowed to wear that. If you like go on their website, it's like says in big letters.
All I'm saying is that
Unless there's like a ban on patches, period. Like if you said there's no patches allowed at the school, you cannot display what you think or anything like that, or what cheer or anything like that. I think it's like one-sided, you know, because you allow some patches but not other patches.
Kids have patches like other names and like the American flag and backpacks.
Yeah. That was like flown during the revolution with, I just don't understand that at all.
so what I can do is
And if you go onto the ACLU's website, let's talk to
I
someone,
can
because I don't want
have
a
you
lawsuit,
speak
I really
to.
don't.
And that's a continuation of what we talked about yesterday as well. Let's see what the win was. What's happening now? The Vanguard School Board of Directors has an emergency meeting late Tuesday. Decided Jaden can sport the "Don't Tread on Me" flag patch. In an email to the parents of the Vanguard School, which was shared with the Blaze, the board of directors explained. From Vanguard's founding, we have proudly supported our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the ordered liberty that all Americans have enjoyed for the last 250 years. The Vanguard School recognizes the historical significance of the Gadsden flag and its place in history. This is an occasion for us to reaffirm our deep commitment to a classical education in support of these American principles. At this time, the Vanguard School Board and District have informed the student's family that he may attend school with the Gadsden flag patch visible on his backpack. Which, by the way, they painted a target against him, or target on him rather, with the politically minded students who are going to now use this as an incident to protest and walk out. And I've seen it happen too, by the way, and I talked about it. If you go all the way back, and there's a lot of content to go through, but if you go all the way back, way back in some of the first videos that I made on this channel, when I talked about one of my best friends who was at the time, he was forced out of school basically. Like, after he was bullied throughout pretty much from when I met him in 3rd grade on, and he hit a breaking point in our sophomore year and was physically removed from the student commons by a teacher. And there was an accusation, and I know that it didn't happen, by the way. I know for a fact it didn't happen because I know him. But that he had threatened, and this was right after Columbine, to go shoot up the school. So he got a 3-day suspension. And when he came back from his 3-day suspension, he didn't get a 3-day suspension for threatening to shoot up the school. He got a 3-day suspension for needing to be removed from the commons, essentially. Even though the bigger kids were pushing him, he was the one that threw the first punch and then had to be removed that way. He got a 3-day suspension for that. And then, yes, the politically minded, which were led, and I know who led them too, by one of the biggest left-wing advocates I've ever met in my life, who is still continuing to do this, by the way. This young woman led a walkout in which, by the way, half the students just did it because, hey, we're getting out of class. I would not be surprised if we found out come probably Monday, and well, there won't be live streams then, but I would not be surprised to find out that there's going to be a walkout for the school. This story's not over yet, but as of right now, he's won. So, and now he's got a target on him. Good for him, of course, but the left-leaning students in his school are going to find any reason now to go back after him and get him kicked back out again. Because they hate the idea of that flag, because, well, they want to be the ones that are treading on people. I got an interesting article here that I wanted to just touch on for a moment, based on the fact that even though Ron Helton doesn't watch Contemporary with us anymore, he was one of the first people to bring this up. And now, with me using the Associated Press almost every day, I know exactly what it is that they're saying with this. I do. But most people consider the Associated Press to be the most neutral news wire out there, and it's not. It is so heavily editorialized you can barely use it at this point. But from the Daily Wire, the Associated Press, once viewed as neutral, works with pro-left foundations. From Hank Berrien. No crap. Everybody knows that at this point. According to a new report, the Associated Press, which has been accused of having a leftist bias, is working with leftist organizations aplenty, including the Ida B. Wells Society, founded by the 1619 Project creator Nicole Hannah-Jones. The Associated Press's Global Investigations editor, Ron Nixon, is a member of the Ida B. Wells Society's board of directors. Others working with the Associated Press include the Lilly Endowment, Incorporated, Jonathan Logan Family Foundation, William and Florida Hewlett Foundation, and Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. The Jonathan Logan Family Foundation states it supports organizations that advance social justice and funds Stacey Abrams' New Georgia Project, as well as Take Back the Court, a group which states to restore the right to vote, ensure reproductive freedom, protect workers, halt our climate emergency, and save democracy. Congress must add seats to the U.S. Supreme Court. The William and Florida Hewlett Foundation funds Planned Parenthood, as well as Advocates for Youth. Catholic Vote reported of Advocates for Youth. The Charles Stewart Mott Foundation said the recent Supreme Court decision to overturn the affirmative action impedes colleges and universities from selecting their own student bodies and fully addressing systemic racial inequalities that persist. Richard W. Hoover, a retired Foreign Service officer, noted in June, both the AP's Trump coverage and the lack of Biden family coverage may have been amply reflected by the Northern Virginia Daily's May-June output, while Trump's difficulties are headlined. Nothing has been reported about the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability's investigations into the alleged Biden family bribes taken from the likes of China, the Ukraine, Romania, and Russia. But again, everybody knew that. In 20, AP urged journalists to stop calling Black Lives Matter destructive events riots, and to use the more neutral term protests, journalists calling the pillaging looting was described as racist. But again, everybody knows the Associated Press has been in the left-wing tank for as long as I've been doing Contemporary. Like, you don't need to be a master's in linguistics to look at the propaganda that's coming out of the Associated Press. That's part of the reason I use it. Because the left-wingers, who will inevitably find this channel and use it to cancel me, will say that I'm only using articles from the places like the Daily Wire, the Barnstormer, or The Blaze, or Conservative Brief, or anything else like that. But I use left-wing sources. Partially because they're verified by NewsGuard, which is a left-wing organization in and of itself. And partially because, again, I want to see where their bias is, and I can spin their bias back to them. I can show you what their bias points are. Just watch for me to, well, if you're on the audio platform, you can't, but just watch for me to take my headphones and glasses off, because I'm so sickened by it. From ABC, it's a weird one. A man is arrested months after finding a bag full of $5,000 in cash in a parking lot. From the Associated Press. A Connecticut man says it felt like he won the lottery when he discovered a bag with nearly $5,000 in cash laying in a parking lot. So he decided to keep it. 3 months later, he was charged with larceny. It turns out the bag, which Trumbull police said was clearly marked with a bank's insignia, was found outside the same bank. Contained cash from the town's tax department. There were also numerous documents inside identifying the rightful owner of the cash, as the town of Trumbull police said. See, no matter how you do it, if you steal from the government, they're going to come and get you. You can't steal from the government. It's their job to steal from you. The man, Robert Withington of Trumbull, contends he didn't steal the money and didn't notice anything inside the bag, indicating who the owner was. It's not like this was planned out, Withington told Hearst, Connecticut media. Everything was in the moment, and it was like I hit the lottery, that's it. The Associated Press on Tuesday left a message seeking comment on Withington's business cell phone. Other numbers listed for Withington were no longer in service. Well, I'll tell you right off the bat. Even if it was a complete accident, you stole, and by stole I mean took money that belonged to the government, and they will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law over it. They don't fuck around with that kind of thing. They have the monopoly on theft, and they will remind you of that day in and day out, until the end of time. Most likely, he's not going to get a full-on felony larceny charge out of this. He's either going to plead out to a lesser charge that will have a fine and restitution, which means just give back the $5,000 and pay the fine that goes with it. But he's not going to see a day in jail over this, unless they can make the overwhelming proof that he did this intentionally, that he was waiting for a bag to drop, and in fact even tried to force the bag to drop to do so. I don't think he's got the evidence for that. From CNN Business, Amazon CEO tells employees to return to the office or their days may be numbered. From Brian Fung, Amazon CEO Andy Jassy told employees to get on board with the company's return to office plan to consider employment elsewhere. The company confirmed to CNN after a report by Insider highlighted Jassy's remarks from a recent internal event. Jassy's message reflects Amazon's continued pressure in the U.S. Office of Staff to comply with a policy requiring them to report to a physical office at least 3 days a week. As part of his remarks, which Amazon shared with CNN, Jassy said during the event this month that while employees are entitled to disagree with the company's decision bringing workers back into the office and to criticize it, they're not entitled to disregard the policy, which means a lot of them are either going to start to have to commute or move back to the city that they were hired in. Remember, the remote work pushed a lot of people out into the suburbs and away from where they were working because they didn't have to worry about it. It's also going to push a lot of people into healthcare bills that they didn't anticipate either. Because one of the other things with working from home is the fact that as long as you meet your deadlines, I mean, you can take care of your kids as you need to. But I'm kind of interested to see who all has to go back to the office at this point and who has to actually move because of it, which is going to put a strain on the housing market because as they go to find and buy an apartment in New York City and get out of Westchester, you got to find somebody who can come back and buy up that house in Westchester now. He also predicted that those who could not accept the policy but their prospects for remaining at Amazon appeared grim. Some people posting to message boards on sites like Reddit and Blind in recent weeks discussed legal rights for employees who say they were hired 12 months earlier as a virtual employee and whether they can be forced to work in an office. Got news for you. You can. Amazon's a private company, even if it's publicly traded. And I don't believe it's unionized. If it's unionized, you might have a case. But if not, you are an at-will employee, which means they may have to call it a layoff to get around the legal hurdles, but you're not going to be working there for very much longer. And yes, I think it's crap that he's able to go back and do that. But it's within his rights to do so. Let's talk about BRICS. Roth, the BRICS expansion is pro-oil and anti-US dollar, from Carol Roth. The yearly BRICS conference wrapped up with a major announcement. The group has put out invitations to more than double the size. In January 24, these invites went to Saudi Arabia, Iran, the UAE, as well as Argentina, Ethiopia, and Egypt. All major oil producers, by the way. This increases collaboration among other major oil producers and exporters, as well as powerful countries, both friendly and unfriendly to the West. It also spells trouble for the US dollar in return. BRICS, an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, originally an idea from a Goldman Sachs research paper, turned into an institution around the time of the Great Recession financial crisis. These emerging nations came together to forge alliances. To compete with traditional Western alliances, the BRICS nations also aim to work together to give themselves more power and a voice in the global economic and political landscape. The BRICS countries have been seeking ways to end the US reign as the global financial superpower, so it's not surprising that BRICS would seek among its slate of efforts to try to lessen member countries' dependence on the US dollar. Well, you've got one issue with that, and that's the fact that the five of you together cannot put together a functioning navy. People like to say the oil dollar, and yes, by the way, if they're putting all these oil producers in together, yeah, you're going to put an impact on the oil dollar, but the US has the monopoly on the aircraft carrier dollar. And you've got a good 2 to 3 decades before you can even begin to start to compete against that. No matter how many military capable and construction capable nations you put together. The US hegemony around the world is still put in place by the fact that US patrols all the shipping lanes. You can put a squeeze on it, you can make it expensive for them to do so, but they have the equipment. Will BRICS make it harder for the rest of us if they're successful? Oh yes, and they will push any recession that we do have coming up even closer to the brink of a depression. But will it destroy the US hegemony? Absolutely not. Not at least for a good 2 or 3 decades. And hopefully we can kick out the bums that are keeping us in a depression and recession before then. Alright, another one out of my estate. From WMTV, NBC 15 out of Madison, Senator Baldwin calls for investigations as Energizer merger leads to rising prices and plant closures. From Shayna Nichawan, Tammy Baldwin is calling for the Federal Trade Commission to conduct a retrospective analysis of the 2018 Energizer Spectrum brands merger. I know we're at the 2-hour mark right now. I'm actually going to just hammer through these last 2. Then we're done. Well, last 3, I should say. According to Baldwin, since the merger, Energizer has dominated the battery market, which has led to higher prices. She says the company's plans to close the plants in Fenimore and Portage could lay off hundreds of workers in the Wisconsin unions. On Wednesday, Baldwin wrote a letter addressed to the FTC chair, Lena Kan, asking the agency to investigate the merger. Revisiting this merger on behalf of these workers and the consumers who now face higher prices, it's clear in the public interest and squarely within the Federal Trade Commission's authority to investigate the mergers, both before and after they are completed, wrote Baldwin. I urge the Commission to swiftly undertake a thorough investigation into the 2018 merger, which unfortunately the Commission has not yet done. Former employees with the company have previously expressed their concerns over the ongoing layoffs, stating rumors were circulating for months before the company's shutdown plan was posted in the Portage and Fenimore break rooms in February. According to Senator Baldwin, the FTC unconditionally cleared Energizer's acquisition of Spectrum Holdings' battery business Rayovac back in 2018. She says this resulted in Energizer controlling an estimated 40% of the U.S. battery market, 60% of the world's hearing aid battery market, and 85% of the total battery market. Hate to tell you this, but they did that anyway, before this. Baldwin's request come just 2 months after the FTC and Department of Justice in July released a new draft merger guidelines, which guide the agency's review of mergers and acquisitions to determine compliance with federal antitrust laws that would improve how the agencies evaluate mergers to prevent the harm to consumers, workers, and businesses. Now, where Baldwin's going to run into a problem with this, and again, it blows out loud that people have to lose their jobs over something like this. It really does. And Portage and Fenimore, by the way, are not rich areas with a lot of places for people to go back to work. But what Baldwin is going to do is she's going to try to use new guidance and new laws to go back and retroactively prosecute, or at least litigate, a situation that is long since over. That was done legally under the old laws. And I don't think the FTC is going to have any teeth out of this. Now, what is this in reality? This is Tammy Baldwin buying votes from union workers. Or attempting to, at least. Because Tammy Baldwin is up for re-election in 24. And not doing so well in the polls either, by the way. Because while she does a lot for Madison and Milwaukee, her interests are pretty much against what the rest of the state is interested in. From the Daily Mail, Delaware prosecutor Alexander Mackler, who worked with investigators probing Hunter Biden's shady overseas dealings, was so chummy with the president, he used his secret email address under the name Robert Ware. What a shock! From Josh Boswell for DailyMail.com. A Delaware prosecutor who worked with the office that's now prosecuting Hunter Biden sent messages to a secret email address that Hunter's father, Joe, had set up for himself, laptop records show. Alex Mackler, 40, is a Biden family friend and worked as a prosecutor in the Delaware U.S. Attorney's Office from August 2016 through May 2019. When the office's probe into Hunter's shady overseas dealings was already underway. Congress is demanding records from the Biden admin on Joe's use of personal email addresses to conduct government business after communications on Hunter's laptop show the president used at least 4 aliases, with fake names including Robert L. Peters and Robin Ware. One of the emails shows Mackler wrote to Joe at the address robinware456@gmail.com. Mackler, now Deputy Delaware AG, worked as a campaign manager for Joe's late son, Beau, in his successful 2010 bid for the state's AG. In July 2015, a month after Beau's death, Mackler wrote a heartfelt condolence email to the Biden family, including one of Joe's secret addresses. Yeah, see, you can put whatever Trump appointee that you want on the top of this thing, but, like, these people are Delaware. They run Delaware. And there are people that think that they're going to get the smoking gun on Joe in Delaware. Nothing is going to happen to Joe Biden. He's going to get about as much jail time as Hillary did when they locked her up. It's a fun idea, but number one, we don't use the DOJ to go after our political enemies. We're not Democrats. And number two, even if we did, these people are in control of enough agencies in this country to make sure that nothing bad will ever happen to them. And everybody knows it too. And the last one, Warning flyers from Yale Police Union draws criticism as a negotiating tactic. From Kyle Jones. This is kind of an old one, but I still wanted to touch on this one. The Yale Police Union is coming under fire after hundreds of flyers were handed out to first-year students over the weekend while they moved into their new dorms. The flyers warned them of the dangers of New Haven, pointing to an increase in homicides, motor vehicle thefts, and burglaries across the city. The flyers are part of a contract negotiation tactic, according to Campbell, who says he had a call with the union president. I'm sorry, I missed a paragraph there. I missed 2 paragraphs. The move prompted New Haven police, Yale police, and community and city leaders to speak out against the decision to distribute the flyers. We do not support this, and to be quite frank, I'm really disgusted that they've chosen to take this path, said Yale Police Chief Anthony Campbell at a news conference Tuesday afternoon. The flyers are part of a contract negotiation tactic, according to Campbell, who says he's had a call with the union president. He said they had no intention of doing this, but when the university approached them with a proposed dollar amount for the contract, they were offended, and that members of the board and the union decided to do something that needed to be done, and this is what they decided to do, Campbell said of the call. If you're going to have an issue, let that issue be between Yale and the union. Do not drag New Haven Police Department, and do not drag the citizens of the city into such a discussion, he continued. In a phone call before the news conference, Union President Mike Hall said the flyers were designed to get the attention of new students, who may receive lots of paperwork and flyers during move-in. We reached out to the union afterward and did not hear back. And this, by the way, is what public sector unions do. Constantly and over again. If they don't get the donations or things or the proposed pay increases or anything else that they want, yes, they will drag the people into this and say, hey, if you don't go back and put pressure on your governing body to go increase our funding for this, that, and the next thing, then you might not be safe. Hey, make sure you don't go to these places here, because, I mean, we wouldn't want anything to happen to you, would we? Some of the tactics, too, by the way, would discourage people from even going back. Like, yes, they've committed to the school year already, even though some of them may drop out at the time, but then choose not to go back the next year after that. This is completely underhanded. And again, this is the government negotiating with the government on behalf of the taxpayers. This is the government making a bid for more of your money against itself. Maybe I'm just coming from a different position because I'm not a big fan of police in general, although still highly preferable to local police over federal police, obviously, because you should have to see the people who are cracking your skull the next time you go to the grocery store. They might think twice about cracking your fucking skull. And I guarantee your town has thought about doing this at some point too. They may not have done it, but they've thought about it at least at one point. To try to scare you and to try to giving them more funding. So they can do raises and have new vehicles and new guns. And other new ways to crack down on you. Alright, and with that, we've reached the end of the show. But it's Wednesday. And even though we're finishing out this week for a whole month off, with the exception of the debates, I still wanted to sit down and tell you about something that I'm thankful for. And that is, by the way, the 3 years that you guys have given me in doing this. It's a big part of the reason that I don't want to go away. At all. But it's also a big part of the reason that I've realized that I do need to restructure things in my life. A lot of you tell me, like, Arvold, if you're listening, by the way, has told me that he prays daily for me to go find a wife and start having a bunch of kids. Something I very much appreciate from Arvold, by the way. And I don't know. I think I might have found somebody who may fit that role. It's part of the reason I'm taking this step away and restructuring how we do things. But I've had a massive amount of support in these last 3 years. Financial, in the live chat. I've had people in here coming out to bounce out people who just want to come in and start a fight. People reminding people that during the morning show I didn't interact with the chat because of the fact that, I actually had a deadline. I had to be out of there. Like, if we go late tonight, if I went for another hour tonight, it wouldn't hurt anything. I'd be exhausted come morning for work, but like, there's nobody standing here waiting for me to be somewhere at this point if I were to go for another hour on this program. Just the views and the shares. Quest Fanning coming out and putting the announcement out every morning. Slacking off a bit on it when I went to the night show, but again, doing the night show is, I'm doing this in the middle of people's dinner time. And I'm hoping, by the way, that going to once a week means that it does make it easier for people to block out a weeknight and say, hey, it's Tuesday night, it's contemporary time. And I think it's going to be Tuesday. I think Tuesday is going to be the magic number. Because Wednesday, when we're closing out, we're competing with Matt and Blonde. And while I don't listen to Matt or talk to Matt anymore, I still have a tremendous amount of respect for Matt and Blonde for what they do. As I've said, with Matt, it's like people come out and say, it's not personal, it's professional, all the time. With Matt and me, it's not professional, it's personal. He slighted me personally. And he's still fantastic at what he does. And even though I don't give him my views, I would recommend Matt Christensen's channel to anybody who's interested in analysis. If you haven't seen Matt Christensen's work, go check it out. I can't, with clean conscience, give him my view because of what he did to me. I'm thankful for a lot of things that have happened over these last 3 years. Being able to break some breaking news first time, having the opportunity to come down and have a good audience to come down and live stream with. When my hometown was going up in flames, and at the time being only an hour away where I could actually go out and get some footage on the ground. Because I knew where everything was. All these reporters were out there seeing Kenosha for the first time. I lived there for 10 years. And I hope you guys will come back and join me on whatever our new night winds up being after September. I hope you'll come back and join me for the debate again, which we'll do a little bit of news before the debate too. Because we want to have people on the YouTube side so we can come back in and say, hey, go check out the Twitch or the D-Live or the Rumble so you can see the rest of what we're doing here. We'll probably do 30-45 minutes of intro before going and doing that. One of the other things, of course, the new project coming up, where I'm going to come and start interviewing people on personal interest topics. Not specifically political. There are going to be political discussions, obviously, because it's so pervaded into our lifetimes. But like when I talk to Britt, who's going to be the first guest, who's already agreed to be the first guest with me. When I talk to Britt, it's going to be about moving across the country and finding a place that fits better with your ideals. Is that going to have some politics come into it? Yes, it is. Absolutely is. But it's not going to be the center focus like it is when we do contemporary right now. Some analysis videos, of course, and like I said when I first announced this, God forbid I sit down and play a video game once in a while and actually relax once in a while. I never do that. And I know a lot of you guys are gaming fans too, so, we can bring in some uninitiated, some people who don't know, or even some leftoids will come in and join the discussion. And this is my big one too, because when I played video games before, and a lot of people respected it, and I'm glad for that. But when I played video games before, I had the rule of we don't talk about politics on the video game streams. That rule is gone, because I'm not doing this 2 hours a day, 5 days a week anymore. So I hope you guys will join me when the new time period is. And thank you, by the way, for the opportunity to step away for a month and restructure my life. change the way I'm doing things, look at how I'm making income, look at my familial life, and yes, even possibly getting married, because I have met one of the most beautiful women on the face of the planet. And I think she feels the same way. Maybe not the beauty, because, I mean, look at me. But I do feel like she's been inspired to make a difference in her own life, too. So that'll be coming down the pipes as well. Anyway, I'm out of here for the night. Let's throw some outro music up. Thanks again for 3 wonderful years of Contemporary. It has been an experience unlike anything I could have ever imagined. Ever. And I've met a lot of cool people along the way, really have. Alright, and with that, we're out of here for the penultimate episode of Contemporary before the month break. I'll be back here tomorrow for the final daily episode of Contemporary. It'll be a fantastic time. We'll have a little bit of news, I'm sure. I'm really hoping they don't load us up. Like, absolutely completely load us up with everything. But we're going to have some news. We're going to have some things going on. We're going to have some stuff to talk about. And I do hope that we'll get some time to do some nostalgia as well. So come back and join me here tomorrow, 6 p.m. Central Time, for more news, more headlines, more fun, and more live chat, and more Contemporary. Definitely looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing you guys here. If you are on Twitch, stick around with me. We're going to go find somebody to raid who's not political, because I got enough of that out of this stream. And we will see you here for the ultimate episode before the break. Take care. Have a good night. We'll see you next time. Hug your family. Call your friends. Get some dinner. Get some rest. Have a beer. Enjoy what's left of the warm day, even though it's starting to get dark earlier. And we will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more Contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar. And this is Contemporary. Take care.